Thanks, Dennis. Thank you for coming on to this talk show and taking out some time to speak with me today. And before we move forward, could you please quickly introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. My name is Dennis. I am the CEO and founder of a meeting scheduling company called X.ai that we've been working on for the last 5+ years.
Oh, wow. That's great. And where is the headquarters of this company?
The backdrop is not Zoom, but downtown Manhattan. So 200 Broadway, if you want to pop by for a Diet Coke.
Okay, great. How many people do you have in your company currently?
So we are fully virtual and a 20-man-ish type company.
Okay, great. And what does this company majorly do?
We've all been in a setting for where it was required for you and me to meet up, you, me, and some other person to meet up, whether internally or externally. And for the most part, that was a manual process. As in, we did a little bit of ping pong over email, a couple of Slack messages, we agree on next Wednesday at 1. Now, that becomes ever more complex with the amount of participants and if they are external, because there is no shared calendar for that. So you need some piece of software if you don't want to forever do this manually. And we are one of those software companies where you can define a type of meeting as a template, share that URL. So if you go to calendar.x.ai/Dennis, you can see my availability for 200 Broadway meetings or my breakfast meetings or my product demo meetings and so on and so forth. Now, where we are unique, certainly compared to others in the market, is the ability to also take advantage of this over email. So you shoot me an email and I can reply back, CC in scheduler at X.ai and say things in natural language, such as,
oh, really? Wow.
Can you get you and me together first week of March for 2 hours on Zoom? Then the email agent understands who I am, what I just said, will remove me from the conversation, log in, look at my calendars, log into my Zoom, find my availability, craft a message, and send that out to you. And that is not necessarily what you will do all the time, but sometimes there is a meeting that is a little different to all the other ones that I do that I just want to describe on the fly. And that's certainly distinct to us.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that that was also a possibility with that. That's great.
We could spend the next 4 hours talking about NLP nightmares, but let's stick to the agenda.
Sure, absolutely. What was the motivation behind starting this company?
So I am, sadly, like many of the others who will look at or listen to this, getting older. So I have memories of the last 20 years where I sat with a bowl of cereal in my underwear at 11 p.m. trying to arrange my calendar, mostly because that's what you did. Kind of like, let's pick another analogy here. You don't have to go back many years for where you'll still have a memory of receiving some contract, printing it out, running to the printer, running back, signing it, scanning it, turning into a PDF and sending it back. As in, that sounds almost silly when I say it out loud now, but in my last company, all our contracts, that was exactly what we did. And then we woke up and that kind of disappeared, right? Now you and me haven't signed anything on paper of late. We all do that online on DocuSign or what have you. Now the motivation for this company was one for where if I've done about 1,000 meetings a year, every year for 20 years straight, do I see a future where I just do another 20 years of doing exactly this? That doesn't rhyme with the version of the future I want to live in. So I thought there might just be an opening to finally turn this into a software process, not a manual one, and brought the team back together. And here we are.
That's great. I'm glad you took the step in that direction. That's nice. What about your school? Where did you go to school and what was your major?
So I took my computer science degree back in Denmark many moons ago. But the funny thing is my oldest daughter is in college in Philly doing software engineering. So I get to do a lot of, for me, super exciting homework together with her because it's kind of a back to school type of thing. So certainly bringing back some of those kind of assignments you thought, I'll never get to use that again. Well, now's the time.
Yeah. Teach it forward, right? That's true.
Yeah, it's funny, right? As in, plenty of things have changed dramatically over the last 20 years, over the last 10 years, since last year. But some things didn't change much. As in, some of the underlying principles of computer science are today kind of very similar to what we looked at 20 years ago. If you want to understand search, there's a set of principles around, say, search or memory or kind of chip architecture that just didn't change much. They're way more sophisticated today, but it is very similar to kind of the same set of thoughts from back then. Or at least that's what I'm telling myself as I play the professor twice a week now.
Okay.
I put that in air quotes if anybody's just listening.
Okay. And I took a look at your LinkedIn prior to joining this meeting. And I see like you have started and, you've been like the founder of multiple companies. Is that correct?
I am 48 today and on my 5th venture. I haven't done anything else in life than startups. And I spent about 5 years-ish on each. So if there's anything I know something about, it would be startups. Anything outside of that, I might know a whole lot less. But that's been my whole career. And just as a interesting footnote, or perhaps I'm just applying propaganda now, but there's plenty of people who believe startups or that of doing a venture is a one-time thing. And I do it once, and if it works, I win the kind of lottery of life. If it doesn't, I go back to corporate. I think you should think of it differently and think of it as a career, like any other career, for where if you're a product manager or a software engineer or any number of other positions in a company, the more you do it, the better you become at it. And it's the same with startups, for where if you do one, I would suggest you not just do one, but really, if you love it, do it as a career. For where over a lifetime, what can you do? 8, 9, 10, 11 ventures. And I'm kind of halfway through.
Okay. So having gone through that unique career, would you say that the entrepreneur life chose you, or did you choose it?
So here's the funny thing. I was very clear, crystal clear about the fact that I did not want to be an entrepreneur, because my dad, my uncles, my cousins, and most of my family ran their own businesses. And I've seen a picture of that, working 6 days a week, coming home late, my dad falling asleep in front of the telly, all the things that comes attached to that of trying to kind of run your own company. And I immediately knew that for me, I just want to get my CS degree and go work for IBM. And hadn't even talked to IBM. It was kind of the bigger company in town where I lived. And I thought, let's take my bicycle, drive out post-graduation and say, I'm ready. Let's get started on this. It turned out differently. And in that story, I think I'm trying to tell you, sometimes life's and how you got to here picks things for you, even though you might aggressively try to do the opposite. I ended up doing justice, and I'm loving it.
Okay. That's one, great story to tell. That's nice. Okay. So according to you, what are the basic skill sets required by a person when they're starting a new business?
That's a really good question. And I think it might even be unfair to suggest one particular skill or two unique skills. And if you don't have those, then you are disqualified from starting something. I do think you being good at a component of what the company is supposed to do is how you can succeed both as an inexperienced manager, if you are right out of school or haven't managed people before, because at least you'll be expert in one vertical. And just by being an expert, even if you're not good on whatever kind of social skills you have yet to assemble, you can survive on that. So I ended up with two particular skills myself that are useful in any kind of entrepreneurial setting, certainly in my field. One, I arrived with a CS degree, so many of the prototypes, I can jump to keyboard and be an active participant. So that gives you a little bit of a head start. But again, that's just in my field. So if you're in fashion or media, you might have other skills, automatic lights, other skills that fit into that vertical, and you should take advantage of that. That's certainly one, and I highly encourage that whatever kind of skill you sit with, you should try to start there because you arrive as an expert. You might have a different take because of different views, and that's how you'll be unique. But that is of high value. The other one, which is certainly, if I were to find one generic skill across, it would be a sales skill. So if you start a company, there is no not knowing how to sell. And not just selling the next customer, because you'll be selling everybody all the time. You'll be selling co-founders, you'll be selling new employees, you'll be selling the press, you'll be selling customers, partners, you will be selling everybody every day, day in and day out. So if you dislike the idea of promoting something or being responsible for them seeing what you see and feel it to be a little bit awkward, it's going to be a very painful journey. Definitely. So that is perhaps the most generic of skills that you would just have to adopt.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you on that. And for the newcomers who are just starting out, how difficult would you say it is for them to start a business in 2021, especially given this pandemic situation?
So I say this every year. So I'm trying to figure out why I keep saying it. Either I am ignorant and wrong, or there's something in my field in particular that makes it true. So it certainly seems that now is the best time ever to start a business. As in, you and me tonight, with a few credits on Amazon Web Services, a couple of laptops, an internet connection, can get started. We signed up for Stripe come 11 p.m. and tomorrow we'll have a little bit of revenue. As in, that is almost magical. As in, nothing is holding us back. As in, there's no backdrop of society that will keep us down, allowing us to not do this. There's certainly our willingness to do this and our willingness to not draw a salary or our willingness to not work weekends or after work, but it's really on you and me. And that I find super liberating, extremely fair. And nobody really is fully excluded. There's plenty of kind of biases. There's plenty of kind of unfortunate settings that makes it harder for some segments. We should all kind of work hard to kind of remove those. But most people, even when it's slightly unfair, given their kind of, whatever dimension you want to look at, which puts them at a kind of initial handicap, there's room to kind of overcome that. They can be part of kind of the solution as well. But I really think today, February 2021, is the best time ever to start a company.
Okay, that's a great answer. And when you were starting this company, what were some of the hurdles that you faced?
Many startups will try to overcome one of two primary obstacles: a technical challenge and or a market challenge. If you try to overcome both at the same time, you will be up for an interesting fight. So a market challenge is, say, as a good example, Airbnb. There is no technical challenge in doing Airbnb. You and me could do that tonight, actually. As in, we could build that up in 3 days, it'll be really shitty, not look as nice or be as slick or have all the things that they've been able to put in place over the years. But there's no technical barrier that disallows you and me from starting Airbnb. They had a market challenge though, because that seemed crazy when they started it. So they had to somehow overcome that. Now, this particular venture, to kind of answer your question, there's nobody who pushed back on them. You know what, Dennis? I love scheduling meetings. That is the most fun part of my day. No, it isn't. As in, everybody fucking hated it. So the market challenge didn't exist. As in, if you can come up with something that helps remove this particular pain in my life, me not having this chore kind of the first 3/4 of an hour every morning, I will love you. No, this was a technical challenge, certainly the way we initially approached it, which was one for where, how do we craft enough NLP understanding so when somebody emails us on scheduler at X.ai, we can actually understand that, given language is not a solved science. As in, there's no particular paper out of the 80s that we're all implementing against. It is just an unsolved science. You might be able to carve out a corner of the language universe and understand just enough to kind of solve things in your particular space, which is what we did to great pain over many years. And then there was the product design challenges of making sure that how do I both see a calendar page and that of you being able to schedule over email as not two things, but one thing, and how are they glued together? It's really rooted in this kind of meeting template, which is really just a codification of the type of meeting that you do. And if you do product demos, well, sometimes you just send people a link. Sometimes you say, let's do a product demo, and we pick up on those kind of preferences. So that was very much a technical challenge. And for me, it was one for where we might not be able to solve it. And then we'll have sat here for a year, having only tried to do so, and everybody wanted it, but we had to kind of surrender. It's kind of like the self-driving car. Nobody's telling you, I don't want that. We just don't know yet whether we can solve it. But if we do solve it, nobody's going to say, ooh, let's have a look at what is the market potential. Everybody just immediately assumes that's $1 trillion market. As in, if it actually ends up being solved, everything out the window right now, that disappears. So that was the challenge. And certainly the challenge both in getting the band back together, assembling that initial set of data scientists, convincing a set of investors, and all of those kind of initial hurdles.
Yeah, that's amazing that you were able to overcome all of that, and your now company's up and running and making profit. That's great. What were some of your monumental successes while running this company?
So any startup is less of that and really more of a bundle of mistakes and moments of pain and despair, and we might not make it. And I could list that easily, perhaps even more so than the moments of success, because those you rarely take note of, because that is just you reaching shore for a brief moment, then setting to sea again. And you can't even remember, were we at shore or not? Should I pick something, it would be perhaps June 1st, 2018, where we crossed that threshold for where we didn't need to kind of label data anymore to understand what people were asking us for over email. So we had at that point about 100 people full-time doing nothing but label data. And we've done so for multiple years before that. But at that moment, we reached that inflection point for where we now need not to do that anymore. And the very use of the product becomes how we move forward and becomes the primary signal. And that took our margin from a dramatic negative percentage to a 93% positive margin, right? Like any other software company. So we're not unique in that sense. It's just that most software is kind of, the cost of goods sold is near zero. Now, that would be one moment. I think the other moment might be early last year. Let's call it January 2020, where I think and I can't give you kind of a name or title or moment, but do you know when the product, its features, how it's unified, finally start to gel? And some people will call this product market fit. You can call it many things, but you can see when it starts to kind of gel. And you move, and perhaps this is a better description, from you selling it to people buying it. Then there'll be people on this call right now saying, Dennis, that's the same. No, it isn't. You selling something is you being good at marketing something, good at presenting it and its value. That's good. You should continue to kind of lean in on that. People buying something is them knowing exactly what they want, seeing that what they want and for where they put a line item in place in the budget is exactly what you provide. And it's more about you just handing it over the counter, quick enough. And that started to happen early last year. And we moved into this kind of, hey, people are in market, actually buying this. How do I then support a better buying process for my kind of future customers? And that is a kind of very different setting. And perhaps I didn't put it very well, but it's certainly something for where I think any entrepreneur will know exactly when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when you become known enough in the industry or in the world, then people actually start looking for you and they exactly know what they want and they reach out to you rather than you reaching out to them through advertisements and marketing. I understand where you're coming from. That's great. Okay, so apart from work, what do you do when you're not working?
What do I do? Not that I have to think about it, I know exactly what I do, but I was thinking ahead. So if people ask me, so what makes you happy, Dennis? So I've been very lucky in my prior life that the ventures that we ran before this had good, successful exits that gave me a few dollars in my pocket. Those few dollars doesn't really give you much other than a little bit of freedom to do what you would like to do. So if you ask me, what do you like to do? I just want a really nice laptop, a cold Diet Coke in the fridge, and a little bit of time to just hack away.
Okay.
And I'll do a little bit of a demo on that and hack away on something else and sit 8 hours on a Saturday and doing something just for the fun of it. Time very well spent. That's on the one part. The other part, I try to really do exercise. So you and me, a lot of what we do at work rhyme with this. So great. If our world is this, we should try to find another world which is not that. So I have multiple kind of regimes that I kind of put in place. I'll give you one of them. So I try to take very long walks. It does two things. It's just a different type of exercise. So I'll take the subway all the way up to the other end of Manhattan. Given I live on Wall Street, that is in one end. And I'll walk the 150 blocks. It'll take me 3 hours. That's no great. iPhone, no podcast, no nothing, no agenda. Just enough for where I can let my mind wander while I actually, draw down 800 calories on that 3 hour walk. Yeah. That's a good way to do a little bit of a physical and mental reset on every given Sunday.
Definitely. That's a great exercise. That's nice. Okay. Could you share an important lesson that you learned from life?
You should make sure that you enjoy the journey and don't get latched on to the destination only as some sort of idea that once I arrive, I will be happy. First of all, you'll never arrive. As in whatever imaginary destination that you've put in place, you'll keep moving it forward. So you earn $10, you really wanted 20. You earn 20, you really wanted 40. You get that particular apartment, that particular car, that particular laptop, that particular whatever. You really want the next thing. So don't get latched on to the destination. really make sure that whatever journey you're on, the journey itself is what you enjoy. Because if you enjoy the journey, then the destination might come and go, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that we had a lot of fun, that this was exciting. We lived a good life. There was time well spent. And I can see some people get too focused on that destination, forgetting that just, sitting here, spending 7 hours doing one thing that you really like today, it's just time well spent, and be happy with that. So I think I might have been too hung up on the destination earlier in life. And it might just be something you can't even tell people. It can only be adopted through age. I'm not sure. Could be.
Okay. And what keeps you moving forward in life?
The question could suggest that for forward momentum, there's some sort of friction I need to overcome. If I take my prior response, I try to live a life where there's little friction in my forward momentum, as in getting up in the morning is not a struggle, or doing a number of things that I've committed to isn't a struggle. So my forward momentum, I think, comes from just a willingness to decide that I want to be happy, that what I have is good and I like it. And things I don't like, being rude or strong enough to cut that away. As in, there's just not room in my life for that. So I don't have the struggles of finding motivation to move forward. I go to bed thinking tomorrow is going to be equally awesome. And it tended to be equally awesome. And if there's something on a particular day that wasn't super awesome, I try to figure out, is that a repeatable component? Because if it is, I should try to remove that. Because that is a luxury that I do take, which is, I just don't want to sit and do things that I either don't like. Doesn't mean that I'm not willing to, apply grit, do hard work, do things that leave a kind of slightly sour taste. Hey, it's kind of like, here's a better analogy perhaps. So you run, whatever you run on a daily basis, if you choose to run as your kind of choice of exercise. So you do your 5K daily run, and it's Saturday. You know what? Let's do a 10K run today. When you're at that 8K, this is not super fun. And you could choose then to say, yeah, that's one of those things Dennis suggested we do not do. Not necessarily, because post that, it's actually very nice having overcome something that felt a little bit like an obstacle in the moment, but it was nice on the other side. So all of that is not what I'm talking about. It is the sitting in on some type of recurring meetings week in and week out, where you both feel you have little to add, don't enjoy it. If anything, it just drains you from energy. Then you should man up and say, I actually don't think I'm a right person to be in this particular type of meeting. I don't think I add value. I do think I have plenty of things I can add, but it's not here. It should be somewhere else.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great way to put it. And what would you say is your favorite book and why?
Favorite book? It does a disservice to all the other good books that you read, right? For where it's kind of like, what is your favorite book, your top 5 movies, your top whatever. So my top 5 movies is probably a list of 17, right? Because it can't fit into 5. My top favorite book isn't one, but a handful, right?
Sure.
But there's certain books I like so much because they form my view on certain things. But it's that particular view. And there's many views for where that book or that viewpoint have become mine, right? I adopted from these people. I'll give perhaps a couple of examples here. So here's a book. There's all the usual books that anybody doing anything entrepreneurial will suggest. 0 to 1, Hard Thing About Hard Things, so on and so forth. You all read them, and you should all read them if you haven't read them, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. Perhaps go read The Narrow Road, which is by Felix Dennis. He's a British entrepreneur. Okay. He is super rude, not really a good human being. And this is not my interpretation. That is his own interpretation. And he says so very early on, and said so many times. That book does paint a very good picture of how much you should treasure equity. So plenty of people will be very casual around equity when they start a company. So me and 4 buddies started a company. Well, that's 20% each. Then we raised the seed round, that cost you another 20%. And then we did an A round, that cost you another kind of 15 to 18%. Then we did this, then we did that. You should, whenever you surrender a single share, have a thoughtful conversation with yourself on whether that's a good exchange. That book certainly formed my, my opinion about how much to treasure your equity if you are an entrepreneur and owner. There's another book, for example, say, this is an easy read. You can read it kind of in a single sitting. Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike.
Oh yeah.
So the whole book is just really one long story where you come to conclude that Nike shouldn't have existed, because there's so many moments where they should have gone tits up, but they didn't. It's a fantastic, joyful kind of read, but he does end the book almost in between the lines, without saying so out loud, asking the question, was it worth it? Some days when I read it, I think he's trying to tell us that it might not have been worth it. And the reason is that his son dies at some moment, and he had really not invested enough time, energy, love, and care into his family over the 40 years that he spent building Nike. And it's a very kind of dramatic left turn from the end of the book, which could have been just a high note, high five, what are they, 100 plus $100+ billion companies today. It's like really just high note, but it was a very kind of different ending. You should also ask yourself in kind of anything you do, when I do this, am I making any sacrifices? I should at least be aware. And if I am, do I think this is a good exchange? I think he was trying to tell us, if I could do the whole thing over again, I think I might not be willing to do that exchange. So different books for different settings and different days. I'll give you another closing one. We'll not turn this into a kind of book review podcast, but read the autobiography by Mike Tyson. It seems like an kind of odd entrepreneurial book, but if you think about it, he's a one-man band who happened to be able to assemble, pick some amount, nobody really knows, probably not even Mike himself, $300 million, right? Over a short period of time. And the book itself is surely, if you like boxing, I'm a fan of the sport, or my dad was a fan of the sport. So I became a fan, and we saw all Mike's games together. It's one of my kind of most kind of memorable set of moments with my dad throughout my childhood. And that book will tell you a story about who to trust and the value of trust. Because what happens when you really, they took him out of high school, right? Took him out of the city, put him in a barn, and turned him into whatever you and me think he was turned into at such a young age. Then he makes $300 million. Then everybody wants to take advantage of you. Like everybody. Anybody which you think you can trust, you probably can't trust. And the whole book is, you can read it as a sporting book and it's exciting, or you can read it as a growing up to be an adult and everybody tried to take advantage of me life lesson type of book. If you read it as the latter, it's kind of sad, but it's a very good book on who is it I can trust in life. And when I trust somebody, what is now at risk and how blindly do I choose to trust them?
Okay. And so in your case, what would you say is the, best and worst part of being a CEO of a company?
Best and worst, if I were to marry the two, not as two separate answers, but as a single answer, it is that you will ultimately take whatever is the final decision. That is obviously great, often and many times, but it's also awful, as in, what if it's not the right decision? Doesn't mean that you don't rely on expert and your team and delegate and all that good stuff that comes with it. Is not you doing all the work, but comes some moment where there's a decision where there's no undo. There's plenty of decisions where you can be very casual because there's an undo. There might be some small financial cost attached to it, but you can still change direction. But there's also some decisions where there is no undo. There's no, say you take a round of financing. There's no undoing that. There's no, you know what? I don't like it. Can we buy back the shares? No, you can't. As in, this is now done forever. These are the terms I now live with. This individual is now on my board. I cannot undo that. So there's certain decisions, certainly, for where I think you have the full spectrum from I'm happy I'm the one making it. It is a little bit scary that I'm the one making it. So that would be the one thing I would latch on to.
Okay. And for 2021, do you have a pledge?
I don't have a 2021 pledge.
Okay.
What I do have, though, if people are interested, they should take a look on X.ai/pledge. Is a backdrop for how I would like people to see what I see in attacking this particular venture. And that is the backdrop for new candidates.
Okay. And now we have reached the short rapid fire questions of this interview. So I'm going to ask you short questions, and please try to keep your answers short as well. And if you come across any question which you don't want to answer, you can say skip and I'll move on to the next one.
Sure.
Okay, great. So first one is, are you an iPhone person or an Android?
iPhone.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
None.
Okay. What is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
I stretch out.
3 things no one knows about you.
Few people know I have kids in college. Few people know I broke my nose 3 times.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Few people will probably assume I speak Danish.
Okay. And okay, what's the craziest thing someone has done for you?
Done for me?
Yeah.
Many things. My buddy, Peter, when I moved from London to Budapest, helped me move. So he rented a car in Copenhagen, drove it to England, packed up all our stuff, drove it through the tunnel to France, all the way to Hungary, Budapest, unloaded the car together with me and drove it back to Denmark. Wow. So that kind of ask, can you help me move? I think that is the most dramatic version of, yeah, but Dennis, that's a 5-day endeavor where I'm driving around Europe. So that's certainly a crazy version of somebody having done something super kind.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. What's the one thing that you would like to change about yourself?
there's 1,000 things, obviously, that we can all be a little bit better at. I try forever to be even better at showing respect for other people's time. It starts with the simple thing of turning up at the very time we agreed on. So if you and me are supposed to meet at 1, we meet at 1, not 1:07 or 1:03. I try to turn up at 12:59 to provide you the respect you deserve. So that's certainly one of those that I forever work on. And I think I was actually not good very early on in life, and I've become better and better. I might even be great at it when I get to the end. We'll see.
Okay. What's your spirit animal?
Spirit animal.
Mm-hmm.
Tiger.
Okay. A rumor about you that you wish were true.
Wouldn't even know. Perhaps people assume my cardio backdrop is better than it is.
Okay.
Because I am dying on some of those runs. It might not look like that, but in the inside, I am certainly crying. Okay. If that ended up being true, that would be great, because I'm still working on it.
Okay.
I did 5K on the rower yesterday night, and at the end, I thought, that is it, Dennis. You had 48 great years. Goodbye. But that could be not a rumor, but I think an assumption.
Okay. What's the easiest way to piss you off?
Not committing to or doing what we agreed to do. Piss off is a very strong expression, but it provides me disappointment. Say you and me agree to do a new venture. That is not necessarily a lifelong marriage, but it's not one for where 3 months in you surrender. Should you surrender, had you and me teamed up tonight on what we just agreed on earlier in this chat to do a thing, and then you said, I actually don't think I can do it. That I'm just not good at. As in, I assumed you were man or woman enough to see through all of the kind of potential future obstacles and then commit to it. And even if you haven't seen all of them, still commit to it because I'm committed. So that I don't take too kindly. And you can, it's in anything in life, right? If you say you're going to do so, I don't mind you saying no. I actually respect that a lot. I just don't respect a yes and then not doing it.
Okay. What's the one thing that you own that you wish you didn't?
It's funny, right? Some people will, there's only plenty of material things that you might have bought for where I wish I didn't own that. It would be nice, kind of like a boat or something like that. I haven't been that stupid, but what do I own? I have, I don't think I can come up with anything which today I own, which is not that. However, I will, because I did think about it. I have owned some shares, which I shouldn't have done, because really my life is split up in two: super low risk on one side and super high risk on the other side, which is my venture. So most ventures are supposed to go belly up, right? That is the most natural outcome of any startup. So I try to kind of just do a very passive and very extreme. But sometimes out of excitement, I've bought a pool of shares, and now I am the proud owner of X number of hundreds of thousands of Snap shares. And I'm thinking, I don't even fucking like Snap chat. And why am I now a major owner of this? And I hated myself for it. And then you get out of it and thinking, hey, I made a little bit of profit. Or I only lost a minimum amount of money. So I've certainly been in those settings sometimes.
Okay. What's the thing that you're most afraid of?
I would be very sad to grow old alone.
Mm.
I think I've put a good framework in place, having been together with my wife for 26 years, having two daughters on 17 and 20. So there's certainly some backdrop that would suggest that that will not happen, but that would be just a negative outcome on an otherwise, one would hope, good life.
That's true. That's true. I hope it never happens. What's the most interesting thing that you have in your purse or wallet?
Oh, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Because I have this really nice Mont Blanc wallet that I bought years back that I really like. But I don't know about you. Perhaps it was the pandemic that was the kind of catalyst. How much have you actually walked around with your wallet of late? As in, I'm using it less and less. I know that's not the question. It's really just what is that one particular small thing that you carry around in some way, shape, or form? But I just want to make the wallet point because it is interesting because I've ended up with a couple of cards and my phone for where I've uploaded most, so I can use that on some kind of digital type of payment and so on and so forth. Now, for the longest period of time, I still carried around my Danish identification. So I have a dual citizenship, my Danish passport and IDs and my American ones. I did carry that around, and I was thinking some days, who is it, Dennis, in New York who needs to see this since you're carrying it around? And the answer is nobody. So why are you carrying around? That's that's a good question. So that was certainly an interesting thing. That's perhaps a natural kind of answer to it, and tied to where you're coming from and all sorts of good stuff.
Okay. So according to you, what technology will transform the future?
It is so difficult, right? For where we know technology is somewhat exponential. Doesn't matter what the curve looks like. It is certainly accelerating. And that means what I've seen and what you've seen over the last 20 years, even if I added it on top of where we're at today, I can barely imagine. But it won't be like that. It'll be a 5, 10, 100x of that. Imagining a 100x future is, I think, impossible for most of us. I do think that kind of inflection point for where most decisions are better taken by computers is an interesting one. And when I say decisions, that's really any prediction a computer can make. Yesterday, meaning X number of years or decades back, a computer certainly makes way better chess decisions than any human. Or now any computer will make way better Go decisions than a human. And tomorrow, it'll certainly make perhaps any way better decisions than any human on driving a car and so on and so forth. And there'll come a point for where, what particular decisions is it really where you and me are making good calls? Is there any? And if there isn't any, then other questions arrive. So what is our purpose? Is it just to do what we're being told by a decision engine? And in many places, we're already arrived, right? As in, plenty of people haven't picked what news to read for years. They've just been told what to read by some algorithm, by whatever company you use today to kind of get your news feed. But that is, that's just a version of the future where I haven't yet personally been able to fully reconcile that.
Okay, that's interesting. So now you have to rate yourself from 1 to 10 on the following. 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. First one is quick learner.
9.
Okay. Book enthusiast.
6.
Okay. As a leader.
What did you say?
Leader.
If you also differ between manager and leader, and those two being different things, I'll give myself a 9 on leader.
Yeah,
I give myself a
definitely.
lesser score on manager.
Okay, how about as a CEO?
I think the CEO's job is more leader than manager. So that's the same score.
Okay, got it. As a friend?
7.5. And this is my guilt on not calling my friends back in Europe often enough.
Okay. Okay, well, with that, we have reached the end of rapid fire section round. And for our readers, how, like, if they ever want to connect with you, what would be a good way to connect with you?
They should take mental note of one thing and take action on another thing. So you can find me everywhere on the internet under /Dennis Mortensen. That is the handle from Twitter to LinkedIn to what have you. The action, if they are slightly curious about what might you be able to do in the kind of AI, NLP space, or even just in the kind of productivity space around scheduling, go to the domain X.ai, sign up. There's a free edition. Give it a whirl. And shoot me an email. I'm on dennis@human.x.ai and tell me what you think. I am super eager for feedback day in and day out.
Okay, great. And before I let you go, I have one last question for you. Could you think of 3 other people who are CEOs who might be interested in doing an interview with me? And you don't have to give out the names right now. You can take your time and get back to me later through email or through LinkedIn. That's up to you.
I'd be happy to.
Okay, great. So with that, we have reached the end of the interview. So thank you, Dennis. Thank you for, coming on to this talk show and doing this interview with me and sharing glimpses of your life, of your background, and how you started, this company from scratch. So thank you for doing all this with me today.
Thanks much for having me. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Take care.